Hi, my first question is it has been more than a year and a half since the virus penetrated in the deepest core of human civilization and made us realize the power of Mother Nature. In India, after the first wave, we thought that we had gained control of the situation, but then the second wave happened. So, according to you, what is the impact of second wave on the Indian economy?
See, whenever we look at any economy, we generally basically look at three different sectors: agriculture, manufacturing and production, and services.
Services.
So, when the first wave of COVID took place, there was a lockdown, and that lockdown was at the national level. Whereas, when the second wave took place, the lockdowns were at quite localized, they're at the state level. So what happened when the first lockdown took place, or during the first wave, when the majority of the urban areas got completely sealed up, but the restriction in the rural areas was not that much. So the impact on the agriculture was not that severe. And compared to this year, previous year's monsoon condition or the climatic condition was also better. So during the first wave, the agriculture in the impact of COVID on the agriculture sector was good. But if we compare with the second wave, during the second wave, the restrictions were at the very local level, and that is why the impact of COVID second wave on the agriculture was more severe. Because if you see that because of the more strict lockdowns during the second wave, several mandis were suspended, several mandis were closed, even the local vegetable shops were closed, though some of the unorganized retail sector was working. So agriculture was very badly hit during the second wave compared to the first wave. And on top of that, this year, the monsoon pattern have also shown us certain changes compared to the last year.
Correct.
The untimely rains, the untimely heat waves. So these things have led to a very much negative impact on the agriculture. And secondly, if we see that during the first quarter of this year, during the beginning of the first quarter, when the climate condition was still better, people were not able to sell their produces to the market. So a huge amount of crops got wasted. So the impact, the negative impact of second wave of COVID on the agriculture was more severe in this wave. Now let's come to the manufacturing and production. Uh, for us in both the waves, this is the only sector that was being hit the worst. Because we think that if we look at most of the manufacturing plants, they are mainly situated in the urban centers. And when lockdown took place, most of the factories were shut down or suspended or been closed for a short while. The lack of labor supply started taking place. And when the lack of labor supply started taking place, and firstly it was at the national level, then it became at the state level.
Right.
And one of the major reasons behind the lack of supply of labor was the mobilization of laborers. When the lack of mobilization of labor will be there, of course the production will take a bad hit. So like the first wave, in the second wave also manufacturing sector was the worst hit. But the service sector, it has shown something else. Like,
Right.
for the first wave, when the first wave was hit, the people who were working in the service sector, they actually saw an opportunity, and they took the first wave of COVID as a learning curve. And if you see that most of the service oriented organizations, they started to go online, they got digitized. And when the second wave started, the, the things for the service sector was quite normalized. And And by the mid of the first wave, when the productivity of the service sector went at a very low, but when the second wave started, their productivity was as good as the pre-COVID level.
Okay.
Or for some industries, it was even better. Let's say, for example, if we look at the Indian film industry, that because that's a industry that every one of us is quite familiar with. This is a time when the OTT platforms gained huge prominence.
Yes.
Yeah, and because of that, the viewership increased, and suddenly the number of films being produced has also gone up. So, and this is also a time when several analytical tools and several video conferencing tools, they started bringing a transformation in the business landscape of the service sector. So if we look at the impact of second wave of COVID on the economy, then we have to go for this disaggregated way. Manufacturing sector has been worst hit by both the waves. Agriculture sector was doing better off in the first wave, but doing worse off in the second wave. But service sector, which was somewhat hit in the first wave, but doing much better in the second wave.
Great, great. Um, Avik, Finance Ministry says that the Indian economy is showing
Hmm.
signs of revival.
Hmm.
So, A, do you agree with this statement?
Uh, these are kind of things that the statement which the finance minister has actually said, I will say partially agree to it. Because if you see that the financial stimulus package that the finance minister said, if that is properly targeted towards the business sector, these SMEs they are targeting, then perhaps the intended objective of the package can be achieved. But the thing is that whenever these stimulus packages are distributed, mistargeting sometimes becomes a very big problem, and we have seen it earlier also. But if we, at the same time, if we look at the different other indicators, let's say the power of the energy consumption that has substantially gone up. Let's say the amount of the UPI transactions, they have also gone up. And I'm specifically interested in the second part because whenever we're talking about the UPI transactions going up, are we seeing that the so-called unorganized retail sector, which was by far was not digitized, they are also coming under the digital platform. Like for example, let me give one example. I live in Goa, and the place where I live in, that's a very outside. I mean, that's a very outskirts area. It's nearly a village.
Okay.
Whenever I'm going into a very small vegetable shop, also they have also started accepting payments via the Google Pay or Paytm or Veeam UPI app. So the thing is that whenever these unorganized retail sectors have also started embarking upon this kind of payment mechanisms, so you can see the tax collection, or let's say the transparency in the business processes. Uh, these kind of things have been improved. Now, while I'm saying this, that these kind of indicators can show a better way to show that part of the economy is moving in a better way, we also look at to think that this is also the time when the fuel prices have reached the highest. And at the same time, the unemployment rate is also at on the higher end. So even if we assume that because of the stimulus packages, economy is likely to grow at a faster rate, but that growth can be a jobless in nature, and which is actually a very dangerous sign.
Right.
So if let's say now, if I am growing at a very faster rate, the economy is growing at a very fast rate, but the jobs are not getting created accordingly, then it might be quite a problem. So, but I will also disagree with this particular statement because if you see, recently the new education policy has also come up. This new education policy, if you closely look at it, this new education policy is very much inclined towards enabling the educational institutions towards incubating startups. So we saw on one hand, when the jobless growth is taking place. The other side is that the policymakers are also thinking about enabling the education institutions to create jobs. So rather than, so whenever student will be passing out, student we can say as the future of the labor force. When the future of the labor force, they'll be passing out of the academic institutions. Rather than looking for the jobs, they will be looking at creating new jobs. So these are some of the things where I think that some of the indicators are showing that we are moving towards recovery. And secondly, few indicators are showing that the recovery might not be there. But on my opinion, the indicators which are showing towards recovery are on the higher side. And 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 let's say, and lastly, the thing is that when these new different analytical tools are also coming up, these are also enabling different new startups to be formed. These take different startups. And in this time, we have also seen a quite huge um, rise in terms of the e-commerce platform, different kind of the penetration of the e-commerce platforms. So there are some of the things which can show that the economy might be at a reviving path.
Okay. So, Avik, while I understand that you have taken a neutral stand on this question, and if we see from a lens of an optimistic person,
Hmm.
uh, if all goes well, which sectors will lead to the uh, rise of India in the next decade, and what kind of the recovery will it be in the coming
Okay.
years? Yeah.
Uh, See, now for this, I will go back to I will go back to the Giteshwar's first question. That if you look at the three different sectors, service sector was showing the highest sign of growth.
Right.
So basically, the firms which are operating in the service sector, and to be more specific, the information technology, because right now the big data analytics platform, they are on the rise. And with the invent of the different technological interventions like the Power BI, the big data, and the technologies like R, Python, when they're coming up, and they are actually bringing certain transformation in the traditional way the business is to take place. So as an enabler of the different kind of services, the IT industry can show a huge growth in the coming years. My second bet will be towards the pharmaceutical sector, because we have seen, because presently India is going through one of the world's largest vaccination drives. And by largest, I can see that the kind of coverage, the amount of people are getting vaccinated within a fixed span of time, that is huge. So that actually has given the pharmaceutical industry to have a huge leap. So thinking that the pharmaceutical sector is going from a second bet. Third, I will look into the retail sector, because whenever we talk about retail sector, we generally think about the organized retail. But during this pandemic, more a majority of the unorganized retail players, they have also come under the ambit of the organized, and how they've organized themselves either by means of the, or I mean joining hands with with different e-commerce platforms, or sometimes they have started the online paymenting mechanisms. So that has made their business more transparent. So that's why this retail sector has shown a growth. And on my fourth uh, sector, in this perhaps a lot of people
ये लोग
might
मिल
disagree
गए,
with me.
8 बजे निकला है, 10 बजे पहुंच गए.
Aman, could you please mute?
Yeah, yeah. Done.
Apologies, Dr. Sinha.
Yeah, no problem. And this my bet on the fourth sector, uh, few people can disagree with me regarding this, but one of the my bet is the Indian film industry, because if we see over the years, Indian film industry, they have contributed huge tax in, I mean, if you call it in the Indian economy in terms of tax collection as well as in terms of the job creation. And when these OTT platforms have come in, there we can say they are a kind of disruptive invention they have brought in. So they are going to shape a future because when the OTT platforms are available, perhaps more films will be made than earlier. So when more films will be made, more collections, more tax revenue, at the same time, more job creation for the others. So this will be my fourth bet. And for the last one, I will say the renewable energy sector. Because the thing is that because when you're at the present time, we're saying that by far India was recognized as a country which is majorly driven by the fossil fuel. But nowadays, when the fuel prices are actually going up, and the different companies like Tesla, they're coming up with the electric vehicles. Even Tata is coming up with the electric vehicles. So with the coming of the electric vehicles, we can say this is a sign that India is trying to move away from the traditional fossil fuel energy-led growth trajectory to a renewable energy-led growth trajectory. So when the demand for energy will shift from fossil fuel to renewable energy, then consequently, the renewable energy generation sector is expected to see a rise. So that is why I think that the renewable energy generation sector is going to be a future. So these are the 5 sectors I will say that they can shape the India's future in the coming decade.
Okay. Thank you, Avik. Since you
Welcome.
mentioned fuel prices, uh, I'm a common man of India, right? And like everyone else in their mid 30s, I also want to upgrade my car.
Yeah.
But this continuous hike in fuel prices has actually forced me to think twice before making any decision. So we all want to understand as a layman, why are these fuel prices increasing, and is it going to take a break anytime soon? Should I buy petrol or a diesel car, or wait for some more years to for a Tata or somebody else to come up with an affordable electric vehicle?
Okay. See, actually, you have actually raised a very relevant question because the thing is that whenever we see as a common man, when we see that the oil prices are going up, of course our work is increased. And because we see the oil prices, the rise or fall of the oil prices, they're sometimes very much closely associated with the rise or fall of the prices of the precious metals or the precious stones, which are mainly used by the jewelers. But the thing is that if you have to shift from a traditional fossil fuel based economy to a renewable based economy, the first thing is to break the psychological resistance among the Indian consumers that you have to let go the fossil fuel. Because when Indian government is gradually reducing the subsidy on oil and starting imposing a taxation on it, we in economic terms, we call it a Pigouvian taxation mechanism. Pigouvian taxation is a kind of thing we call as the sin tax, a tax for doing bad. So whenever we're using the fossil fuels, it will nevertheless will have a negative environmental externality on the economic growth pattern. Because see, if the fuel, let's say the petrol is available at, let's say, take a hypothetical example, for 40 rupees. Okay.
Okay.
And at the same time, the whenever you will be taking, let's say, an electric vehicle, you will have to charge the electric vehicle, let's say, for 20 minutes. It costs you 80 rupees. Then as a common man, which one you will have to go for, oil or the battery?
The
Of
one
course,
which is lower,
which
yes.
is lower will go for the oil. So if the oil prices are lower, then will it give an opportunity for the let's say the Indian power industry to make a transformation? No. So in order to make a transformation, you have to first penalize which you are presently using. But yes, I must say that such kind of transformation should be done at a very phase-wise manner, because the way presently it has been done, it has been kind of overnight. This kind of overnight price hikes can have a very negative impact on the production cycle, because the thing is that if I have a manufacturing plant, then I cannot change my energy use pattern overnight, right? Or let's say if I am using the uh, electricity which has been generated from the coal or from oil, if I tomorrow ask the power grid that from tomorrow onwards you are not from tomorrow onwards you are not going to produce the electricity from these sources, that's not possible. But that is what actually happened. This could have been a very stepwise manner. See, if you want to promote renewable energy or alternate energy, you have to increase the fuel price. But that has to be done in a very phase-wise manner. But the way it has been done, both the industrial sector, residential sector, the common man or the industrialist, everyone is equally penalized. This shouldn't have happened. They should have given an opportunity to embrace the shift. And rather here, they have been forced to take the shift. So this can sometimes be, I mean, for the, let's say for a very short term of period, let's say for 2 to 3 years, this can have a negative impact. Because let's say now, if fuel prices go up, then of course, the automobile sale will come down.
Yes.
Now, when the automobile sale will come down, can the electric vehicles can replace this demand immediately? No, it will take some time. So the thing is that the consumption pattern of the consumers, the consumption pattern of the different industrial sector, that will undergo a change with a lag. And in order to incorporate that lag, this change should have been carried out in a very phase-wise manner, not such a haphazard manner. So that has become the problem.
Understood. Understood. Thank you, Avik. Avik, I have a follow-up question to the transformation, which is innovation.
Mm,
These days, every business leader, every corporate talks about the innovation.
mm.
Since you have written a lot about the environmental economics, what is the dark side of innovation?
Yeah, I mean, that is one aspect generally no one wants to talk about. But I don't know, whenever any industrial revolution has taken place, this question has come. And presently, we're in the era of the fourth industrial revolution. And as an economist, I must ask this question, that what is going to be the impact?
Yes.
Let's say, for example, why do people innovate? We generally innovate to improve our business processes, right? And whenever we look at the business process from a very fundamental theoretical perspective, we generally require 2 to 3 kind of inputs. First is capital, labor, and technology. And sometimes this capital and technology can be combined. But now, if I and given that each and every firm has a resource constraint, that they cannot have the unlimited resources in terms of finances. When their financial resources are constrained and they have these 3 choices of input, if they start increasing investment in technology, they will of course have to reduce their investment towards labor. So whenever we talk about these innovations, they're presently coming in, there can be a way that they can be labor replacing technologies. So let's say out of all the innovations, one of the prime innovation that India is going to face is the energy innovation. So why first thing, why energy innovation is required? If we have to improve our environmental quality and bring sustainability to our economic growth pattern, we need energy innovation. But what will be the consequences? Let me show you one small diagram. Let me share my screen. Yeah, let's say energy innovation, and the 2 vertical lines over here let's assume these are the two policy paradigms that energy innovation can have an impact. Let's say when at the very beginning stage, when the energy innovation will start to increase, the associated financial risk will be higher. So the energy innovation will not be having the desired impact and the environmental degradation will rise. But once government intervenes in, the financial risk start getting reduced, the private investment starts coming in, then the energy efficiency improvement will start taking place and environmental degradation will fall. This is what we generally look into the newspapers when we listen to the energy innovations will going to be the environmental blessing. But what is not generally talked about is this particular side. When the energy innovation will be developed, then at the development and deployment stage, the labor requirement will be higher. But once they are deployed, the requirement of those laborers will start coming down and the consequential unemployment will rise. So when you are gradually moving towards enhancing your energy innovation or the other innovation capabilities, you are on one hand, you are improving the environmental quality, but on the other hand, you are deteriorating the social balance. And in your development economics literature, it is a very well-formed debate that you cannot achieve environment and social balance together. There will always be a trade-off scenario. And even if we look at the most developed countries, let's say, for example, the OECD countries, they have introduced the concept of new approach to economic challenges, the NAEC. If you look at these NAEC challenges, they are talked about this particular aspect from a policy trade-off perspective, that they are trying to implement the environmental taxation mechanism and they're trying to finance their energy innovation initiatives with that environmental tax revenue. But whenever they're implementing this innovation, they're specifically talking about and repeatedly talking about that we have to tackle the policy trade-off to retain the social balance. What is the social balance they're talking about? They're talking about the social balance in terms of rising income inequality, which might be stemmed out of the rising problem of unemployment, which can be a result of the rising energy innovation. Now, these are the 2 points which you can see where these 2 curves will actually meet. We can call them as the early intervention and late intervention points. So if can government proactively take a measure to have a control over the situation, then the early intervention will happen. But trust me, we have already crossed this stage. We are somewhere in between. You can see the peak and the trough, the crest and the trough, both the graphs. We are somewhere in this region. So the early intervention stage has already gone. What we can look for the late intervention, that yes, you cannot achieve the best of the environmental quality, or you cannot have high unemployment. You cannot achieve the maximum or the minimum. What is the best you can have? Best you can have are optimum solution. And this is this late intervention point. This is the policy optimum level. Now, of course, the question will rise that how can we be so sure that this will happen? Of course, all the sectors will not be impacted the same way. This is mainly, if you look at the sector composition of, or the industrial composition of different sectors, then we can see this will be mainly happening to the sectors where the technological intervention is huge. Let's say, let me give you one simple example. Presently, India is looking towards introducing the self-driven cars, right?
Right.
And now, if the self-driven cars are introduced and Ola and Uber they start adopting the self-driven vehicles, what will be the negative impact? Of course, you can say at the very outset level, the consumers will be benefited because they will get the vehicle specifically on time. But perhaps it has been said, it is hypothesized that the number of accidents will come down. But what about the unemployment that will be generated? What will be the number of drivers that will lose out the jobs, that they will move out of the jobs? So for a very short duration, the firms will be earning a profit. But when this unemployment scenario will prevail, a negative demand pressure will be created. And that will have a direct impact on the production level, the price level. So that can have a very long-term negative impact on the economy. So having innovation is always good, but having innovation beyond a certain limit where it can destroy jobs, that is not desirable. If we look at the Scandinavian countries, they have actually achieved the policy optimum. You can see that. So they have certain regulations like you cannot fire us your employees beyond a certain limit, or if you have the primary education, and if you are not employed, then it is the duty of the government to feed you. So when this kind of policies are in place, then of course the industrial sector will always have a pressure not to innovate in a way that it replaces the labors to a very huge extent. So this is a broad overview of the dark side of the innovation. So I will just so should I leave this over here or should I stop sharing this?
Yeah, I thank you first of all for transporting me back to my MBA classroom, and I have a follow up question on this on innovation actually. So these days the burning topic on innovation is the space travel.
Yes.
In the quest of dominating the space travel,
Mhm.
these Elon Musk or Richard Branson or Jeff Bezos of the world,
Mhm.
are we creating an irreversible damage to the space? What are your thoughts on the space waste management? Since this is the way forward, which I see.
Hmm. Because the thing is that whenever we look at the space debris, as we call it, this space waste or space debris is generally created at the very lower orbit level, and sometimes, and when the accumulation of this waste is quite huge, that can create a problem for the Earth orbital motion. Because if the accumulation of this debris is too high because of the frequent movement toward the space, then perhaps we can see a rising number of meteor showers, which will not be except the meteors, will be man-made meteors. And whenever this meteor showers in the form of the debris, the space debris will be start coming down, they will nothing but create holes in the ozone layer, because whenever this debris will be entering the Earth's atmosphere, their velocity will be so huge that their surface temperature will be will be sufficient enough to break the ozone layers. So perhaps we can say the kind of depletion of the ozone layers we have seen in last 20 years,
Mm-hmm.
if the space debris starts to increase, we can experience this within next 3 to 4 years. So that is why the space waste can be a very huge problem for the future, at least from the environmental sustainability perspective.
Okay.
And so if these farms, they have to sustain for the for the long in the business, they will have to take care of the space waste management, which is presently, I believe, not a very organized way to do it.
Okay. Um Avik, I have one personal question. So apart from being an economist, you give a lot of motivational lectures on how to deal with anxiety and low self-esteem.
Mm.
So since I know you personally, I take this liberty to ask the question. We would like to know your personal experiences with stammering and how did you not let it hamper your confidence and career?
Yeah. See, I have this problem since my childhood days. And actually, after my birth, when I was nearly 7 or 8 months of age, I used to have uh, constant fevers, and and I used to faint a lot. And by the time I reached my 2.5 to 3 years of age, I was diagnosed that some part of my left brain was completely damaged, and that led to my stammering problem. And after that, I have done the speech therapy, some tongue tie operation that also took place, but nothing actually worked out. So I thought that I will have to live with it. So at the very initial level, that if you have to deal with the problem or you have to live with the problem, then first thing you have to overcome the fear of it. So from, let's say, very early age, let's say from the 6 or 7 years of age, I started giving stage performances. Stage performance either in terms of recitation or the hosting of the school programs, or and you have seen me in ITM that I used to give the stage shows of the with the musical instruments. And I also started taking recitation at a very professional level. So gradually, when my stage fear started coming down, then I started to find out that when you are on the stage, and that stage can be a very public stage or a classroom, when you are on the stage and people are there to listen to you, they are more willing towards listening to your content, not your delivery pattern. So
Absolutely.
if I have my content well made, if I know how to present it before the audience in a very interesting manner, they will listen. And that's why that I have not faced a very major problem. And even when I was working with Tata Consultancy Services, I used to give presentations on behalf of my project members. When my senior members were also present, I would give the present. I used to give the presentations, and I believe Giti, you have also seen me presenting in the classroom.
Right.
Yeah. So the thing is that uh, whenever I know that my content is good, and I know I have some unique way to deliver it to my audience, they will be engaged. Let's, for example, and let what happened that how I engage them, students in the class, that after my first class or at the very beginning of the first class at GIM, one of the students asked me that, sir, may I ask you a very personal question if you don't mind? No, I don't have, you don't mind. Sir, do you stammer? I said, then I thought this is a very golden opportunity for me to increase the engagement. I said, no, I buffer. I don't stammer. I buffer. And so that actually created a very cordial mood in the class, and the sessions started well and also ended well. So once I know that I can engage with my audience or engage with my students in a way that they are able to understand what I am trying to convey, the challenge will not be there.
Thank you, Avik, for responding to my question, a personal request. Since we are approaching the timeline, at this moment, I would like to invite our CEO, Mr. Abraham Thomas, to share his views with you.
Yes, sure.
Ipsa?
Thanks, Gidesh, and good morning, Avik. Thank you so
Morning.
much. What a thought-provoking, what an intellectually stimulating session we've had. Absolutely loved some of the concepts that you actually introduced, whether it's optimum innovation to uh, waste management in space, to absolutely brilliant. I mean, we've really learned a lot of new concepts and a new lot of thoughts today. So thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah,
I have a question which
Yeah.
is more to do from a understanding consumer behavior and a marketing standpoint. Not too long ago, we used to always talk about India and Bharat, as behavior, and saying that when you're marketing, whether you're targeting the India or you're targeting the Bharat. Now we've quickly moved on to New Bharat, right? And New Bharat seems very different from what earlier perception of Bharat was, and because of digitization, it's constantly evolving, so it's not difficult to put a pin on it. But you suddenly find uh, importance to national pride. Consumers are more happy to consume Indian brands compared to national brands. There is a sense of, and it's largely driven by the spread of digitization and therefore
Yes,
exposure and all of
of
that.
course.
So, do you think there is a certain level of homogeneity which has been reached when you're creating these segments in society, or are there still big variations in that?
See, India being a very diverse country, because so many languages, so many religions, so many cultures, bringing a homogeneity is nearly impossible. But what can bind all of them is the sense of nationalism. See, if we want to promote the domestic retailers, if we want to promote the domestic entrepreneurs, then in some way we have to imbibe the sense of nationalism, so that before going for the product which has been imported or made outside India or made abroad, why not give a chance to our own ingenious producers? So, and thanks to social media, when we are looking at the different social media, we can see that the different small scale retailers, or basically small and medium scale and enterprise owners, they are also gaining an opportunity to sell their products across the different parts of India. Let's say, for example, presently I am sitting in Goa, but if I want to read a Bengali book, then I will simply open some of the newly formed website or newly formed startups. I will contact them. They will deliver the book at my place. Or let's say if I have to purchase some of the sweets from Hyderabad, I will look for some of the, you can say, website or e-commerce portals which has been run solely by some of the small shop owners in Hyderabad. I will contact them, they will deliver it to me. So yes, the sense of uniformity is there, but instead of uniformity, this heterogeneity among the cultures, heterogeneity among the specific geographical distance, this is actually bringing, we can say, a beauty inside this unification also.
Extremely well put. I have another question, which is, in this day of change with so much of disruption happening, we always keep saying there's a need to reskill, upskill, and skill our workforce. And that seems to be an area where we are lagging behind, because invariably it is people who are already employed who gets more job compared to people having the requisite skill to do that. So what's your advice in terms of, as working professionals, how does one continuously reskill and upskill oneself to be ready? Because there is, like you said, innovation can cause redundancy and unemployment.
Yes.
And how does one counter that with reskilling and upskilling?
See, regarding this, I will refer to two concepts, because when we started during our MBA days, what we used to learn that once you join an organization, you will have to unlearn, run, and relearn. And that actually can be traced back to the Darwin's principles of the survival of the fittest. So when the entire business scenario is changing, and if you want to survive in the competition, then you have no other way to upgrade yourself, because either you reinvent yourself or you become redundant. You don't have any other option. Let's say, for example, when I completed my PhD and joined this academic field in 2016, I was not well aware of R and Python. But when I saw that these students who are getting jobs in the industry, they want to understand the basic concepts of R, Python, and the data science. They thought that, oh, okay, then if I have to teach well in the class, I will have to learn it by myself. Then I have to learn it. So in that way, every industry, when they are going for the transformations, the employees who are working, they have to reorient themselves. They don't have any way out. And of course, you can say that with age, the barrier to change increases. As let's say if I have been in this academia for 5 years, had it been 15 years, then probably it would have been difficult for me to learn. Because it has been small duration, 5 years, it's easy for me to learn, because I'm still at my late 30s. I have still the urge to learn. But if I am in my, let's say, late 40s or early 50s, then I will think like that, I have passed so many years without learning them. I will cross my next 10 years without learning them also. So that barrier to change will create a problem, and that will make the people redundant.
This is a very, ominous kind of sign, because leaders are typically people who have spent X amount of time, and the tendency is that, should I fix it when it's not broken?
Yes.
Should I, fix it after it's broken? And then he says, it's a good thing going. I've got a cash cow, so let it kind of continue, and I hope I can. As long as I'm here, there won't be any disruption. So what's the approach to that? Because we're going through a lot of change in our industry in terms of digitization and all of that. Whereas the current model is extremely successful and profitable. So do you fix it before it's broken, or do you ride it as long as you can?
See, there can be two different ways. Let me give you an example of the present education industry. When the pandemic started and we understood that the classes will be completely online, there was a hue and cry across all the faculty members, and that's not about GM, and that actually happened across, I believe, almost all of the education institutes in India. So that we first looked at how can we teach students online. So, but when we looked at the younger faculty members, they said, okay, online hai, we will do it. No worries. So they took some training from the YouTube, or some training, the official training from the MS Teams or Zoom team. They went ahead. Compared to the senior faculty members, some of them took up this challenge, but some of them, they said, no, as long as these online classes are going, we will not take any classes. This actually happened. So the entire group of the faculty members, they were broken into two parts. One said, okay, let's embrace the change. There are few people who are still struggling to embrace the change. The third group of people who were not ready to embrace the change. So as I said that, let's fix it before it is broken. These, we can say, those who are the self-starters in the industry, self-starters, they majorly drive the industry, and the leaders, they mainly come from that ambit, that these self-starters. For them, let's fix it before it is broken. Those who are still struggling, okay, let's fix it once it is broken. And those who are on the third side, they said, okay, it is broken, okay, let's live with it, the broken ones. So these are the three types of people will be in the industry, and I mean, according to change adaptation.
Thank you so much, Avik. What a brilliant,
Okay.
thought-provoking session. So much of reading I intend to do on a lot of stuff that you spoke about today. Thank you so much for
Welcome.
coming and spending this hour with all of us. Thank you.
You're most welcome.
Thanks, Girish.
Thank you, Abe. I would now like to invite our CBO and CFO, Mr. Ashish Chatterjee, to have a thought exchange with you. Ashish, sir.
Hitesh, and thank you, Dr. Avik. I think it's been wonderful listening to you, and you touched upon so many aspects. My question was that people tend to compare us with China, and because the only commonality is basically the large population base. But after that, everything starts becoming different, right? From our political system to infrastructure to per capita income to skill development to IP protection. And given that we did try Make in India, but that didn't work out, and the digital boom that's happening is actually creating jobs in a different space. So given that this demographic dividend can also very easily become a demographic curse, because even if what we see right now, it's not the underemployment or unemployment is not related to skill. In fact, they are the highly skilled people are more unemployed in the country.
Yes.
So what are your views? How should India tackle it? How should entrepreneurship be looked at given these?
See, one of the major problems. One of the major problems is that when the Make in India or the Digital India movement started, one of the major problem was that movement did not reach the grassroots level. And when I'm talking the grassroots level, I'm talking about this basic skill development. Basic skill development, and that's why at the very initial stage, both of these movements failed a lot. And that is why when this new education policy has come up, if you look at this new education policy, they are basically looking at the technological institutions or technical institutions as the incubation centers. Like for example, presently Indian government have formed one IIC, the Institute of Internal Incubation Center, something like that. I just forgot the full form of it, the IIC, and they are targeting the IITs and NITs to be the different nodal centers of these IICs. So and basically, and see, there's a problem of the mindset also. Let's say, given an example, I believe you are aware of the famous invention Mitti Cool, the earthen refrigerator. Why that innovation was not diffused across the country? Why the innovation was not replicated? So in order to replicate those innovations or the skills, you need people at different levels. So for that purpose, you need nodal centers at different states. And those nodal centers should be driven by the educational leaders. And when that thing happens, only then these innovational capabilities will be multiplied. Apart from that, if you say that now you have ample amount of money, now you can simply use it and start your own venture. Of course, that venture will not survive. That will never be able to survive, because how will I be able, as a very small scale player, how am I be able to communicate about my ventures towards the others? Because I might not be able to very much good enough in the reaching out activities. So in that part, the nodal centers will make a big role, and where the new education policy will be helpful.
Nice. I think well articulated, really beautiful thoughts. So my best wishes to you, and thank you so much for spending the morning with us. Over to you, Gidesh.
Thank you, Ashish. May I now invite Sunil Kumaran, who heads our content and marketing for Big FM. Sunil sir, I request you to come on screen. Aman, is Sunil there?
Yes, yes, can see him though, but I'm not very sure if network is all right.
Okay. So, Avik, before we finally conclude, I would like to take some questions from the chat box. The first one is by Siddharth. He's asking, lately per capita income of Bangladesh crossed India's per capita income.
Hmm.
So, how much worry is that when it comes to inflation?
See, the per capita income of Bangladesh has crossed India. I think there is nothing much to be worried about, because the thing is that one advantage that Bangladesh has is their uniformity across the country, but India has a diversity. So the thing is that in the face of pandemic, the response is quite obvious that the response toward the situation will be very much different. And I believe the per capita level of Bangladesh has surpassed that one of India during the pandemic times only, not not before that. So so if we just look at that, the kind of restrictions and the political stringency India has imposed during the lockdown period or during the COVID period, was it comparable with India and Bangladesh? I believe no. India was much more stringent in saving the lives of the people. And when you are in pursuit of saving the lives of the people, you can be sure that economic growth will be hampered. But at the same time, when we're talking about inflation, of course, see, presently there is a fluctuating demand pressure in the economy, so the inflation problem will be there. But once the economy reaches the recovery stage, and as you can see, presently our Indian financial market is also all at a very soaring high, which I suspect can be a bubble. So once this market correction start taking place, this inflation will also get corrected. So there is nothing much to be worried that Bangladesh has surpassed us. That can be a very short-term phenomenon.
Thank you, Avik, for taking the question. Since we are approaching the timeline, with your permission, we would like to conclude the session.
Yeah, sure.
And before we finally conclude it, I would now like to present you with the gift of music. We invite you and your family to dedicate your favorite songs from the golden eras of 1780s and 90s to your loved ones on 92.7 Big FM Panji Goa. I'll share the screen with you. You can WhatsApp your dedications on the number mentioned. And our RJ Uday, who's based out of Panji, he will play your dedications between 6 to 7 on 29th of July.
Okay,
Yeah.
sure.
Thank you so much once again, Avik, for accepting our invitation on a short notice.
Thank you, Gitesh.
Yeah. And sharing your morning with us. Thank you so much. Thank you, Biggies.
Welcome.
Thank you, Aman and ECM, for sharing your time with us. Have a good day.
Thank you, Dr. Avik. Thank you, Gitesh,
Welcome.
doing this so well. Thank you, all the biggies, for joining.
Be in touch, Avik.
Yeah, please be in touch. Chalo, see you.
Thank you. Bye bye.